Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from the Underachievers called Renaissance. So I can't be the only one who feels that hip-hop hasn't exactly had a banner year in 2017, am I? I mean, obviously it's not saying it's a completely bad year. We got solid records from Kendrick Lamar and Joey Badass, and that Quelle Chris record was a really underappreciated gem. But at the same time, it's kind of telling that my favorite hip-hop album thus far in 2017 has come from a record that was surprise early released on Christmas of 2016. And yes, that's Run the Jewels, and yes, I'm going to be counting it as a 2017 release for year-end list purposes. Just deal with it. I'm not going to miss on talking about it. But maybe it's just the hip-hop that I've covered in the first half of 2017, but there's been a lot of underwhelming to flat-out crap records that I've covered on this show. And I'd like to think that I'm not missing anything all that big out there in the mainstream or the underground. So you can bet that I was really happy there was going to be a new album coming from the Underachievers coming up my scheduled cover, seemingly with little to no actual buzz. And that kind of blows my mind. Sure, I wasn't exactly crazy about that It Happened in Flatbush mixtape last year, but Evermore, The Art of Duality in 2015, that was a really damn solid sophomore album that tackled some big ideas with really strong bars and some fascinating dualistic production. So I was really hoping that Renaissance could be the shot of life that hip-hop has really needed in 2017. So, okay, was I right? Okay, this wasn't quite what I was expecting, at least not in its entirety, and especially not after Evermore, The Art of Duality. Some folks have described this more as a mixtape than more of a cohesive project, and yeah, I can definitely hear that in both the shorter track lengths and the much more scattered track ordering. But that doesn't exactly have to be a bad thing, considering both of those two can rap their asses off on this album. Unfortunately, for as scattershot as this project can feel, it also feels a little bit sloppier. In other words, very much feeling like a continuation of that 2015 project, except with a fair bit less impact and cohesion. It's a good album, but it's not nearly as strong as the last one. And what frustrates me about this is that when it comes to this sort of wordplay and style and this brand of hip-hop, both sides of their duality are right up my alley. The two most obvious comparisons for me on this project are Joey Badass and a lot of the pro-era group and Denzel Curry, not just because of some overlapping producers, but also a similar sort of balance between hard-edged hedonism and some conscious social commentary, only further accentuated by the clear, well-articulated flows that feel like they could go on for miles with some real intensity. I will say that there are points where I feel that Issa Gold isn't quite bringing the same visceral intensity as he has on, say, Evermore, The Art of Duality. I tend to prefer more of AK's bars overall on this project, but that's really a general observation. Hell, the entire album, especially in its midsection, doesn't quite have the same bite as their previous projects, especially when it starts to drift towards entirely too much weed and brand names to be all that interesting for me. Even despite some flows and wordplay that, yeah, they really do connect. There's some good brag rap here, for the most part. Maybe it's because some of the flows can feel a little bit more languid, but I'm hearing a fair few more forced or flubbed rhymes on this project, and considering how much they are looking to smack down all that mumble rap crew for being boring trend followers to be pitied more than anything else and then pretty much ignored the rest of the time, they should not be the easy to spot these number of flub spots. And this ties back to probably my biggest issue with this record as a whole, a severe lack of focus within the individual songs. Because let's face it, the Underachievers have always felt a little bit scattershot in their writing in between the bragging, the weed, the sex references, and some hints of deeper insight and social commentary. But nowhere does it feel more messy than it does on Renaissance, which is kind of ironic considering a lack of defined focus is more often than not my biggest complaint about mumble rappers too. And while, of course, I would prefer this style and flow, I think the biggest reason why this project underperforms in comparison with, say, Joey Badass's All-American Badass or Denzel's Curry Imperial is that a lack of clear ideas holding individual songs together. Less of an issue when it comes to hedonistic rambling or assertions of dominance. Sure, you kind of don't need that deeper level of insight or cohesion, but it is certainly distracting when you have a couplet calling for the CIA to assassinate the current US president. And while I don't deny I appreciate the moments where AK does get a little bit more introspective to reflect on broken systems and systemic racism, with the songs feeling all the more cluttered, it can make juxtaposing those thoughts against Issa's more violent or hedonistic verses feel a little bit disingenuous, and they don't really go into the level of depth in this social commentary that you would hope. And what gets all the more frustrating is that there are points where they do showcase some actual storytelling that reflects a little bit more focus and ambition. The crime on Issa's verse of Break the System, that's a great example, with the painful dramatic conclusion of a son being locked up in the same jail cell of his father. But a lot of these examples, a lot of the storytelling is few and far between, and more often than not I find myself gravitating to the songs that are more straightforward, trap-flavored bar fests, like Crescendo or Cobra Clutch. But this takes us to the other big issue here. For as much as I like a lot of this production, full of prominent horns, sharp fragments of guitar and bass, piano balancing against some cooler, wiry synths and some noisier percussion, be it boom bap or trap, most of this is supporting songs that can feel kind of undercooked or lacking the structure or progression to hit harder for me. For a 15-track release that only hits about 40 minutes, a full third of these songs don't reach 3 minutes, and that gives you the impression that with a little bit more focus and a little bit more time, these songs could have been expanded or refined into something a little bit heavier, or at least more developed with some tighter, more melodic hooks. I actually really enjoyed when singer Mello showed up for songs like St. Paul and Break the System, but in both these cases, she really feels underutilized. I could have used more of her hooks across this album, and that's before we even touch on the odd discrepancies in volume levels and production between tracks, like with Eyes Wide Open and Head Right, the closing track, which don't help the songs feel less fragmented. And you know what, I know it's such a little thing to really nitpick here, but it reflects the odd feeling that this project just wasn't as refined or focused or polished as it could have been, which is a damn shame, because on top of liking a lot of the flows, I really do like a lot of this production. The echoing guitars on Eyes Wide Open, the noisier drums on Break the System, the jazzy touches on Kiss the Sky and Different Worlds, courtesy of the prominent saxophone that I really liked, the bass-heavy trap knock of Crescendo, courtesy of Ronnie J. Ooh, with this and with his work with Denzel Curry, this is really a producer I need to keep an eye on. He's pretty damn solid. To the lingering guitars and bass against the cawing on Phoenix Feathers, probably the best part of that song is the production. The grooves here, they're potent. I appreciate the blend of textures, and I'm not even about to complain about the balancing more 90s tones against modern trap. It feels appropriately modern, at least to me, but with rare exception, I would not say many of these help these songs stand out as all that distinctive, especially as some of the bars from song to song start to run together a little bit. But overall, look folks, I do like this album. This is an easy record for me to put on and really enjoy, but I will also admit there's a little disappointment here. Issa Gold and AK, they're such technically skilled rappers who pick out some great beats that I wish they had given this project the consideration and the focus to make individual songs stand out with a little bit more focused themes and a little bit better ideas, or hell, then maybe bring the album together as a whole. This, on the other hand, it can't help but feel a little bit slapdash and probably should have been dropped as a mixtape. I'll echo that, given its lack of internal focus, going to get a little bit more leeway from critics as a collection of sharp but rather directionless bars. You know, I can go on about how I'm still not exactly wild about how many times they end up trying to take your girlfriend or wife, or how the weed rap angle is starting to get really played out, even if the vibes on this album are pretty decent. But really, putting all that aside, I'm giving this a light 7 out of 10 and a recommendation, but it's more for Underachievers fans. For those who are looking for a pretty chill project of solid enough wordplay that doesn't really demand a lot of attention. In other words, I'm not entirely surprised now that this has flown under so many people's radar, but you know what, if you're curious, it's still worth a listen all the same. Check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yes, I know, I'm late to the punch with this one, but hey, it only got up to the schedule this time, and I really did want to talk about it. Shame it didn't turn out better. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys want to buy the record, anything I told you sounds interesting, link in the description below. And I got the poll up here. I'm really curious where hardcore Underachievers fans fall on this album, because again, it is kind of directionless. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do? Oh, I already said that. But if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process, link to my Patreon is right there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule. Hell, there's voting going on right now. And if you guys want to add records to my schedule, that's once a week for the higher tiers. More details right there, but until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.